The next video. In today's video I want to show you guys what all podcast do I listen to. Now listening to podcast is very essential if you are into the field of computer science or IT or software development. uh, like before 2018 I wasn't even following podcast, like I wasn't even aware about this, but I saw a video from a YouTuber called Sean Allen, and he mostly do iOS development. And after that, I have been following. I have been listening to podcast in my free time or while traveling, or while doing household chores. And it's a good way to stay up to date with what latest things are in software development, depending on what technology you are following. So yeah, here are few podcasts. Like the list is very long. I might have to do two episodes about it. But yeah, here it goes. Let's see how it goes. So first is about a .NET Core podcast, mostly related to .NET. Like I don't do .NET, but yeah, it's important to keep eye on what other technologies are doing. Uh, Next is the .NET Maui podcast. So Maui, if you don't know, is something like Flutter or React Native from Microsoft. So it's kind of like using one technology to make apps for mobile, web, as well as for desktop. I'm not sure if Maui supports web, but I am sure it supports mobile and desktop for now. Another one is .NET Rocks. Again, I am not a big listener of this, but I have kept it. Then the next is 3 minutes with Kent. Like the Kent C. Dots is a huge personality in web development, so he sometimes make a podcast. Six Figure Developer podcast. I don't really listen to it. Adventures in .NET, not a huge fan of. Adventures in Angular as well, I haven't listened much to it, but just given that it is a web development podcast, I have subscribed to it. Then I would recommend you Android Developers Backstage. Like this is a very good podcast for if you are into native Android development, or even if you're a cross-platform mobile app developer, you should listen to this podcast. Next, which I would recommend is if you are interested in AWS, check out the AWS podcast. I'm not much into AWS. Then a Bootyful podcast. If you are into Spring Boot, then you should follow this podcast. Then, like I have subscribed to a lot, but I don't think you need to subscribe a lot. I will just only mention which are really useful to me. Then what else? Then if you are into C++, you can subscribe to CPP cast. What else? Yeah, the Developers Bakery is fine. Like the guy who hosts this podcast, Nicola Corti, is a huge personality in React Native. You might have heard about it. He does a lot of open source work in React Native, and he has done some open source work in native Android as well. And he interviews mostly mobile app developers, but other people from software development as well. Then the Diff is a Meta open source team podcast. I'm not sure whether it is still going on, but yeah, I had subscribed to it. Then Fragmented is a good Android developer podcast. It is again a native Android developer podcast. First, it started as a native Android developer podcast. Then it moved into more general software development. Then again, it has come back to Android developer podcast. Next, what else? So if you are yeah, It's All Widget podcast is a Flutter podcast. Like currently they are not posting any new videos, but they used to be active like around 2018, 2019. But every once in a while they will post some video. Then what else? Yeah, you can subscribe to MetaTech podcast. This is a podcast from Google, and they mostly discuss about high level software development techniques, which goes into developing meta apps like WhatsApp and Messenger, all that stuff. Then you can subscribe to Now in Android as well. Again, it is related to native Android development. Then React Native Radio is for React Native development, as the show says. You can also subscribe to React Native Show podcast. uh, yeah, if you are interested in Rust programming language, you can subscribe to this Rust Station. What else? Then if you are into iOS development, I would highly recommend subscribing to Stacktrace, native iOS development particularly. Then Swift by Sundal is also into native iOS development. Then there is Swift over Coffee. Again, it is related to mostly Apple platforms like iOS, macOS, Swift. This podcast is on its third season. Like for I think for the past 2 years they were not posting any videos, but they have become active again. So yeah. Then there is Syntax, which is for web development. Talking Kotlin is mostly, I think it is from JetBrains, the original creator of Kotlin and those IntelliJ IDs. So yeah, these are the few podcasts which I follow regularly. If you have any recommendations for me, do let me know in the comments. Thank you. Bye.